Good afternoon and welcome to this BIPC Startup Day event hosted by Sheffield Libraries. We're absolutely delighted to be hosting a Precious conversation today. So I'll just tell you a bit about Precious and our two speakers. Precious is a digital network that celebrates the achievements of women of colour. It's a great website. It's full of great information, network opportunities, and I thoroughly recommend that you have a look. Today, we've got Jessica Elliott and Kisha Bradley in conversation. Jessica is Managing Director of Jessica Elliott Management. So she is a talent manager and also runs a very successful dance studio. Her biography on the website is a very long list of achievements and things that she's managed. There's lots of royalty popping up there. It's very impressive. And Kisha Bradley runs Sheffield's Brightbox Makerspace, which she has just described as encouraging children to learn through play, but sneaky learning. Sheffield Libraries have worked with Kisha in the past, and she's always done sort of like really inspiring work with us. It's seeing sort of kids who perhaps are interested in learning and then suddenly getting it, and you can like see what goes on behind their eyes. Is absolutely wonderful to see. I'm really excited to hear what they've both got to say about running their business, the highs, the lows, the challenges, and all of those sorts of things. We would ask if you can fill in your evaluation forms at the end. That would be epic. But other than that, I will get out of your way and we'll pass over to Jessica to start the chat. Thank you.
Hey, so today we are going to be talking about business, everything business. I guess how we started, what we love, what we don't like so much, what works well, what doesn't. You are gonna see behind the scenes, basically. I'm guessing that's what's gonna be happening today. So if I just start off, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the intro, Jessica, and thanks, Alex, as well for introducing. So we work with people of all ages, so not just kids, we also work with adults and women. And I got started because basically there's like passion. I had a lot of passion in like, I was infuriated really by the systems that exist already, and I didn't feel prepared for my own education. So a bit of background. My accent is American. I'm from the US and I moved here about 5 years ago. And I grew up in a white working class community. And from that, I learned in my education that we were prepared to pass tests and memorize and be able to reel off all these facts. And then when I went into university, that was not helpful at all. So I went to get an engineering degree, and engineering is all about creative problem solving and understanding the world and making new solutions. And I was just not prepared for that at all. I had this like great ability to tell you all these facts, but I couldn't face a problem and then in an iterative and productive way come up with solutions. And I didn't have that spatial awareness, and that comes from being stereotypically raised as a woman, which there's nothing wrong with that, but there's a lot of skills that are lost when girls aren't encouraged to jump off trees and play with Lego and all of that. So there were spatial awareness problems and there were creative problem solving gaps in my education, and I didn't discover that straight away. I struggled and I couldn't figure out why I wasn't learning the same way my peers were, who came from backgrounds that had more expendable income, so their families could afford to hire private tutors and to pay for after school clubs. And in my community, where 30% of young people lived under the breadline, that just wasn't possible. Even the families that were slightly better off wouldn't have been able to afford informal learning, which is where creative problem solving really happens. So there's that frustration of the education system just completely failing me to be a productive member of society, like without onward education. But then once I did succeed and I did really well in engineering, and I got a job, I was frustrated by being in a room of people who had very similar life experiences. And then the ideas that were coming out were all similar, because that's where ideas come from. It's from our past experiences and how we relate the world to the future, if that makes sense. And they were just spinning around the same ideas, and there wasn't a creative process, among other issues about inclusion and equity, and moving up in the ranks. But I think we all know plenty about that, I hope. So I wanted to, one, prepare young people to be creative problem solvers, but also address issues in the workforce where there just weren't creative ideas because there weren't a creative set of experiences or like a diverse range of experiences coming into the room. And by that, I mean Black, Asian, minority, ethnic, disabled, LGBTQ+, like cultures spanning from working class to people with more expendable income, and everything in between. So socially excluded people essentially not being, and marginally oppressed people not being represented. So that really put a fire in my belly. And then I had support from the University of Sheffield's Enterprise program, Sam Deacon, to get started. And from there, it was just learning as I went along. Yeah, does that answer the question? Is that helpful?
So it definitely does. So basically, I think in a nutshell, you had a passion for something, and then you made that passion your business. So for anybody kind of watching this who has a passion, it could be for dance, for hair, for for whatever it is. What practical steps did you have to take to make that into a business that you can live off?
Yeah, so when I started with a problem, so there was a massive problem that I was addressing, and then I was presenting loads of solutions. And so I think that's the first logical step, is just to think about it. I don't think people often talk about that as a step, but it's a very important step. So I looked at, it's a tool called Lean Canvas, and you can access it online for free. And it takes you through all the different things that you need kind of to start a business. And it's a dynamic document, so it should always be changing and you should always be reflecting on it, but it just helps you with that idea phase. So here's your problem, or kind of what you want to do, and then it helps you plug the gaps of what needs to be done to make it possible. And how much money. And I'll be completely honest, I think it took a bit of naivety is that the way to say it? It took me being naive to start the business, so I had no idea, and I didn't realize how much I'd have to rely on my own funds. So I didn't pay myself for 2 years, so I was on a shoestring budget. I had a few part-time jobs in there, and otherwise I was working full-time on the startup as well as, and yeah, really, I think my background coming from being really poor, not being able to eat all my meals as a child, really helped me to be able to live on a shoestring budget. I don't know if I would have been able to do it otherwise. And I think that's a massive problem in the system. No one should have to make that decision. But yeah, I was really naive. And then I Googled loads of different support systems. So I had support from University of Sheffield. There are a few different Groundworks, I can't remember the name of their support programs. School for Social Entrepreneurs. Sorry, Google's being triggered by me talking. So loads of different support programs in Sheffield. The library has their own, I think it's called Sheffield, that's located in the library, that can also support you as a startup and get you a bit of training, because you start a business, you wear all the hats. So you're your marketing, your HR, your business development, your finance, you do all those things, and no one has all those skills. So it's really important to find services that will support you and help you at least get the grounding in some of those. So that was second step. Third step is figuring all the skills that I needed to get started.
And who would you say have you had any mentors along the way?
I had loads of mentors. so much community support. And I don't think you can start a business without having loads of community support. You have to have those like first 5 to 10 people that will absolutely buy your product or your service, even if it's absolute crap. Like those are the people who are really buying into you as a person, and they have like a strong belief and trust that you are going to be successful, and that they're going to be behind you no matter what. And some of those people I met through the business support. Some of them I met through Twitter. Some were like just general networking events, and then a lot were like being in the spheres of people who care about like education, technology, digital, and social mobility. So yeah, loads of mentors. Some of them I still lean on today. Some of them are just friends.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely important to surround yourself by people who will buy your product even if it's crap, but likewise to find those people that will like give you the honest feedback, not the feedback your mom would give you and like pat you on the back and say well done.
Yeah, totally. So like how long have you been going?
So we set up officially 3 years ago, but I've been going for around 5 years now.
Okay, so obviously we are in a global pandemic. How have you had to adapt yourself, and what has the impact of COVID had on your business?
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll go through like, because it's been a journey. I don't have like a single answer to that. It's definitely been a learning process, and I think it's been a learning process for everyone, because like I don't think most people have faced a pandemic in our lifetimes, not in the UK anyway. So when it first happened, we did a bit of like firefighting, because we had loads of projects that were ongoing, and so we had to contact all of them and just say like, where are you? Because we couldn't do anything until we understood what the pandemic meant for them and what a lockdown would mean for them. So we did a lot of that, and it was waiting. Like we just had to wait, because people were I imagine, just like we were, just inundated with like, what do we do? Risk assessments. Do we close? Do we stay open? How essential is our service? What is like, how do we fit within the government's guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. So it was just a bit of like madness. And then essentially like all of our work, it was with sorry, that's my dog in the background. All of our work was with libraries, museums, cinemas, theater. So all the places that were told to close. So I knew like, if we continued the way we were, there was going to be zero work. There was nothing. And it was a bit of just like brainstorming and creative problem solving, if I take my own advice of like, what can we do? What should we do? But the problem with that was, and it was a failure on my part and a mistake, was we didn't know enough about the people that we work with in order to even start the idea phase. Like we didn't have the resources or the tools, meaning understanding our client base, to be able to move forward. But luckily, within like, I think it was like 3 or 4 days after we started this panic of brainstorming, the furlough scheme was announced. And it was very obvious to me that my team and myself, where our mental health was just so unpredictable, and we were all really stressed. And I knew that as it stood, we didn't have a service to provide. Like there was nothing there. So we all furloughed. I furloughed my entire team with the mind that we just needed to recover from this like mental health crisis within our team. We needed to be able to breathe. We needed to be able to process this, because it's a massive event. Like it's not something that should be taken lightly at all. So we furloughed the whole team so that we could take that space. And I think that's probably one of the best decisions, hardest but best decisions. And it was my ego at first that it was like impacting, because I was like, does this mean that I failed because my business can't survive? And but it just gave our minds time to breathe, and us time to like process and come up with those ideas and solutions, and to understand the wider implications of what a pandemic means for our communities that we aim to serve and like have an impact on. And that's when we came up with the best ideas. So we ended up delivering, we noticed that like digital, not everyone has a computer at home, or if they do, they share it. internet's not always reliable, so like we might cut in and out, and there's just no knowing. So we knew that there needed to be solutions that weren't digital, that weren't online. So we created 250 making at home kits with like booklets. So essentially what we did in person, we created and we sent out into people's homes, and 100% of those went to homes that were under the breadline, and 50% of those went to Black, Asian, minority ethnic homes. And that was really important, that we were serving the people who actually needed it. And then the second thing we did is we worked really, really closely with 8 young people in one of Sheffield's most deprived communities, so Parson Cross. And we asked them, like, what do you want? What do you need right now? And they said they wanted a pizza oven. So okay, pizza oven it is. Like, we'll build a pizza oven, but I needed to make, so it was something that they wanted. It was relevant to them, but it also needed to be a learning opportunity. So I hired professionals that understood the materials, health and safety, you know, the process of building, and I did the design bit. Like, I taught them about design and how you design. And yeah, they built a pizza oven, and they're still going. So they keep saying, we want to do this and we want to do that. So we work really, really closely with those 8 young people. And during the second lockdown, rather than shutting down, we know what the community needs now. So we're working one-on-one with those same young people. And that way they can continue socializing, because they've told us coming to the allotments and working with us is the only social interaction they get all week. That's it.
It's so sad.
Yeah. So that's been really important, is that we continue doing that work even though we're not being paid for it. And that's been a bit challenging as a business, to like balance impact over financial sustainability.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really tough thing that we are all facing at the moment.
Yeah.
How many people do you have in your team?
We are a team of 4 people who work on a regular basis, and then we have a whole slew of amazing sessional and freelance workers. So that's, yeah, our hours are really flexible, and that's one of the things I'm really proud of being an employer. So those are the things that you don't think about when you start the business, is all the like how you get to impact like the system, and you get to say like, no, I'm going to do it my way. Like, we're not going to have 9 to 5. You're going to work when you want to work. And we're just going to, you know, we're going to talk, and we're going to communicate, and we're going to figure out how to make it work together. So that,
but I think it's so important to have, I call it like the vibe of the place, and to have, I think that's where your personality shines through. And I think a lot of people think a brand is a logo, but it's not a logo.
So much more.
It's so much more than a logo. A brand is what you've just said, which is you don't want 9 to 5 working hours. You want people to work when they want. You know, you want to be flexible. It sounds like, you know, if people have got kids or whatever, they can take them to school. They can, you know, that kind of thing. That's your brand. And I think for anybody kind of looking to set up a business, I think everybody kind of needs to, before you do that, what is it that you believe in?
Yeah, exactly.
And
absolutely.
How is that gonna shine through in everything that you do? Because what you've said, it's not just, you're not just like rocking up and building pizza ovens or delivering counselling or workshops or where that. No. It's all the behind the scenes bit. It's who you employ. It's everything, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like values are so important. And we don't do a good enough job of like communicating outward what those values are, but we definitely talk about them as a team every time we make a decision. Like, some of them are simple as like, we're human first. We're all human first. We make mistakes. Also, if other people, if people that we're thinking about working with treat us like crap, we won't work with them. You know, it's not worth, they might want to give
the hassle and the money. Or
no,
nothing
honestly, if someone offered me £1 million and they were just absolutely rude and didn't treat us well, I would say no, because
it's too much.
It's too much. It's not worth like our mental health and, you know, how we value ourselves. And also, we don't want to align ourselves with someone that, or an organization that doesn't share our values. So
you've got a team of people, like, so I think a lot of people when they start, and me included, to take that first step and take on your first employee, I mean, never mind the kind of financial outlay and the fact that you've got to pay PAYE and this and holiday pay and sick pay and all of that. Just the fact of you're going to have to hand over a little bit of your baby. It's like dropping your kid off to the childminder for the first time. Like, how did you feel when you do that, and how do you do it?
Yeah, so I've been really, really lucky. I think, like, again, it comes down to your values. So when you're interviewing, you have to know that that person shares your values. And then from there, you just have to honor and respect their experience and know that they're going to come with fresh new ideas and new perspective. They might even criticize the way you've been doing things or challenge you, and there's growth from that. And I think when I made my first hire, I didn't realize how much impact that it would have on the business, as far as, like, yes, she did things differently than what I do, and in ways that I wouldn't have done it, and that's not good or bad. It's just different. But like time, like, I didn't realize how much time she would, like, how do I, like, free up of mine. Like, I had so much more free time, and I was like, I don't know what to do with all this time, but it just meant that I could scale and I could keep growing. And now we're a team of 4 or 5. Like, it just exponential growth. Like, it just opens up so many more opportunities. It also adds work. Like, there's a whole HR and needing to care for your team and make sure that they feel supported. But they're like fresh ideas, experience, more challenge, more criticism, which I love. Remember when I said earlier, find that mentor, that person in your life that will be critical and give you honest feedback. When you have a team, you get even more of that. And just creating that atmosphere and that culture where they know that that's valued and that they're being paid to challenge and to bring their expertise in. So for me, it's been a no-brainer. All those little niggles where you're like letting go, those can be worked through. And I think just having a really clear mission, vision, and values, as cliche as it sounds, like having those really clear helps, because then when they're making decisions and doing things, you can work through it together. And as long as you're working towards those things, then it should all fit together.
Totally.
Yeah, does that,
yeah, no, yeah, totally. I can totally identify with that. So you mentioned, you touched on kind of mental health before. So I think when you run a business, and especially as women, we wear several hats. You know, we're the wife, we're the mum, we're the business owner. You know, we've got to remember to pick up the dry cleaning, to do this, we've got to cook, we've got, like, there's so many things, not just our business, going on in our lives. And I think especially for women of colour, there is a pressure from your community as well that's kind of on you, because, you know, like, to succeed at everything that you do, and when you're a woman of colour, there's no room for error, really.
No, there's not.
It's a very thin margin. You know, you can't fail. Because if you do, the stakes are so high. That's how it's portrayed. And you're strong. You're so strong. And if you drop that strong barrier for even a minute and have a wobble, it's not something that's people are not so quick to pacify you. So tell me, what does a day in a life look like for you? What is the juggle look like? What, you know, in terms of what is your personal life like? How do you juggle the two things, your family, your friends, your life?
It's not, that's a loaded question. And I think it comes in, it has its ups and downs and its seasons, if that makes sense. So personal info, like, I have a dog who is very demanding of my attention. And I have a husband, and part of, it's very easy for me to work from, like, the minute I wake up until the minute I go to bed. But my relationship would not survive. Mental health would die. And I have been in places where I'm like, this is not good, especially during, like, any kind of political, and it shouldn't be political, human rights issues. It really takes a toll on my mental health, and I have to check in with myself. Or I have amazing friends who are like, Kisha, check in with yourself. How are you doing? How, like, are you okay? And like one of my tools is I have a daily greatness journal, and it's just like a really, really short reflection in the morning and a really short reflection. And it takes like 5 minutes of my day. Like meditation sometimes isn't possible, and it's an unrealistic. I'm setting myself up for failure if I commit to like, oh, I'm going to do 30 minutes of meditation every day. That's not always possible. But 5 minutes a day, no excuses, like I have to do that. And then like the dog walks help a lot, because where if I didn't, before we had the dog, I would just be like, oh, I don't have time to walk today. Where if I don't walk the dog, he'll drive me nuts and I won't get any work done. so he's not interrupted us at all because he's had his walks today. Otherwise he'd be like in my lap trying to do my work for me. So I think you just have to be really conscious, and and I do get carried away. Like, I'm not going to lie and say that I'm perfect and I like have this perfect work-life balance, but I get carried away, and it becomes very obvious that I'm getting carried away because I get really tired or moody, or I decision fatigue. Like, I won't be able to make decisions. Like, everything will seem really clouded together. But if I take a few days off and I come back to it, I'm like, that was obvious. Like, why was I making such a big deal?
I think because you feel guilty. I think especially when you work for yourself. I think when you work for somebody else, you book a couple of days leave and you leave that person's work behind. But when it's your own, you feel a bit guilty sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, at first I had that. I definitely had that at first. But as I was like learning and I saw my corporate clients, it's like they're not feeling guilty at all. So that guilt went away, but it's more from like ambition and drive. And it's more about what you were saying earlier about Black women being under that pressure to, like, we're representing an entire like race
demographic.
And it shouldn't be that way. That's totally unrealistic and ridiculous.
It's a lot of weight on your shoulders, isn't it?
It's a lot of weight, and I think it comes more from that bit of it to show like, yes, I'm a Black woman and I can be successful. And it's because I've had comments made to my face since I've started the business about you're only successful because you're exotic, and that's completely inappropriate. Like, that should not be said. So some of it, like, I want to prove to you that I'm not just successful because I'm Black, not exotic. Like,
I've been called that. At first I was like,
yeah, it's insane. But it's because I'm skilled and I have experience, and I've got years behind me of doing this and working intimately with the communities and knowing what they want and need, and what has real impact. And I think that pressure to keep going comes more from wanting to prove that, rather than like the guilt. Like, the guilt's not there anymore, because I've seen too many corporate types like just not reach deadlines or be really relaxed about deadlines. Like, the guilt thing I'm over. But yeah, it's more about proving that like you can do it.
Yeah, I get that. It is a lot. So in terms of you mentioned journal writing, what about other self-care tips for like entrepreneurs?
I think it's different for everyone. Like, and I would like, I'm not the best. I think it's about being mindful, and what's helped me is having a team and seeing in them when they need a break, and that's helped me like recognize when I need one. And my team is really good at telling me like, you're working too much, or you need a break, or like, you've done a really good job, you deserve a break. But I like to run, and I practice what I preach. So I'm all about skill building and trying new things. So like lettering,
nice.
I'm terrible at it. I'm terrible at it. Like, none of it looks very good, but I'm learning lettering, and it's just something that's like, all of your attention has to go on it, and you've like focused, and you have to be patient and go slow, which I'm not very good at. And then like walks, and my partner and I, we do a long walk on the weekends, and the garden. I love gardening and baking cookies. I love cookies.
Nice.
Brownies and bread. I definitely tried sourdough, but I couldn't, like, running a business, I couldn't keep up with the like rotation of like every few days you have to bake a loaf and take a break from your work to go do the next step of like proving and adding dough, baking it out. like it didn't work with, I was like, I'm in the zone, I can't get up right now. And then my sourdough would be like deflated once I went back down. So that hobby didn't pan out. Maybe in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's, yeah.
What do you think? Do you think your business will look a lot different once the pandemic's over, or?
I think that, you know, before, so we called it like, we had like 3 different tiers of work we did. We had conferences, which was where we would work with like 6,000 people over a few days. We had like your summer clubs where we go into libraries and we provide workshops, or we'd have the Girls with Drills workshops where just like we might have one interaction, or maybe like interactions over like that were spread really far apart, and that's like kind of medium impact. And then like our really intense impact is where we go into one community, we work with the same people week after week after week. So the balance of that, I think before, most of our work was in this like medium impact area, and then we had like one community that we had deep impact with. I think the balance will change, so I think we'll do it all. Conferences and festivals we'll all see about, because I don't think anyone has any idea when that's coming back, but I think we'll do a lot more of the deep impact work, and really focusing in, because that's what's needed right now. That's young people really need that one-to-one work for a while. And the same with like we'll be doing more work with women around like DIY skills and skill building. That is yet to be decided, but we'll be doing a bit more of that as well. So it's just the balance that changes. We'll do all the same stuff, but we'll emphasize what's important in different ways.
Nice. And just before we go into the kind of Q&A section, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What would you like to be doing?
In 5 years, I would love, so I don't know, do you do any DIY work?
I'm not great if I did.
Have you ever like gone into B&Q or like another like hardware merchant and you've had to ask for something, or like if you have a plumber or a mechanic over, you like send your husband, you like the man in the house and like the guy, because they're not going to be taken advantage of, right? Us women, they see us and they think,
oh, I can tell them anything.
or they just laugh at us sometimes. In 5 years' time, I would love to have like something in place that says this is a provider of hardware or a plumber that will not be rude and like will not laugh at you. They are inclusive and they will answer your stupid questions without laughing at you. And like that would, like 5 years' time, I want to be able to walk in to B&Q, ask for like PPE, like protection equipment for women, and not be like, oh, go to the gardener section. Like, no, I want like I want proper like stuff that fits women. So that's been a bit of a bugbear recently, because more people are doing DIY and they're asking me, where can I find stuff for women that fits women and like appropriate for women? And I'm like, I'm really sorry, but it doesn't exist. Or
no, it might in 5 years' time.
Yeah, or if it doesn't exist, people aren't willing to stock it. So that is like, hopefully we'll have some part to play in that. And then hopefully Sheffield Libraries will have a makerspace. And there. Personal plug, like a little plug for Brightbox.
Awesome. Well, I think people are going to ask questions, I believe.
Thank you, first of all. That's absolutely fascinating, really interesting, really useful, especially what you were saying about the pandemic and just sort of like just having to show that for both of you, I guess, having to show that adaptability, where it's like you've worked so hard and then someone's lobbed a grenade in the middle of everything that you've done. That must have been so just having that, I guess, that mental resilience and strength is just it's really inspiring to hear about. But I've just got a few questions for both of you, to be honest. So we're obviously doing this as part of Startup Day, so maybe if you've got one tip for someone who is wanting a startup, maybe there's people watching now who have got a passion and they've got some idea of what they want to do with it, but they're unsure about how to go about it, is there one thing that you would actually suggest? Go to Kisha first and then Jessica.
Yeah, so I would say listen to everyone's advice, but only take the advice that you like and that sits right in your gut, because you will be giving so much advice that is either terrible or advice that is maybe not relevant to you in that moment. And it's really easy to run away with things and like get distracted by that. So, listen to all advice, but only take on what feels right in your gut and in your heart.
I was going to say something similar, actually, like be careful who you take advice from.
Yeah.
You're not going to take financial advice from a broke person. You have to look at who you take advice from. But because that one's been said, I would say don't be afraid to start small. I think far too often, especially now with social media, and we didn't even touch on that in the interview, but it's very easy to get carried away and think that everybody is running this multi-million-pound thing when really they're on there with their kitchen table. So do not be afraid. If it's, I don't know, like cakes you want to sell, make 12 cakes and go and sell them to your street, and when you've done that, you'll make enough money to put back in to buy some more ingredients to maybe make 24 cakes the next time and sell it to the next street, and so on. Don't be in a hurry to kind of float on the stock exchange when but I think that is what people think. People think, I'm going to do this, and it's just not like that. I started with 8 kids in a church hall. You have to make a small start, and then
I guess that everyone thinks that we're going to be Mark Zuckerberg within the first 6 months.
That's it. And
no one wants to be him. Look at him. Look at where he is now. Don't want to be him.
we live in such a throwaway society and such an instant society where people see like the example I always use is they see like a dance group like Diversity, and they think that they're going to be like Diversity on their first lesson, and it's like, well, no, do you understand the level that those boys have had to go through, and the dance lessons and the setbacks and everything to get to where they are now? It doesn't just happen.
Follow other small brands for like ideas of how they got started, because they're really real and they share their stories and they're great at Instagram. I learned so much just by following other small businesses, learning from their mistakes.
And is that a good way to use social media then? Because Jessica had mentioned social media. How do you use social media to be useful in business? Because from our library's perspective, we do a lot of promotion and plugging, but sometimes it feels like you spend more time doing social media than you do sort of like any of your work, and it can be quite overwhelming. Can it be like that for yourselves, or is it easier?
I think social media is a full-time job. I mean, it is like you be a social media manager. It's an actual living of a full-time job. I think mine, for a while I had someone doing mine. I actually do mine myself now, but it's something I plan out, and I do it all in advance on a Sunday, sit down and work out kind of what's going on for the week and just plug it all in. Except for we do some shout outs. Obviously I don't know what's going to happen, who's going to get what audition, who's going to get what job, but I have templates for everything. I think with social media you have to be quite organized, and I also think, being very real here, it can take up a lot of your time because you just then aimlessly scroll through it because it's true, isn't it? You sit there and it's like half an hour's passed and it's like, what are you doing?
I have a really different experience with social media. So when I first started, that was the first time I ever burnt out, was just trying to manage the social media aspect and like feeling like I needed to constantly stay connected. And so what I did is I deleted Facebook off my phone. I probably didn't post anything at all on social media for like a year. And then when we did, because my business is, we're based in communities, and to be completely honest, like we don't need social media to advertise everything that we do. It's just not necessary. It's more about like, it's just not necessary for us. It's not needed. Who it's needed for is maybe people who want to fund us, and it's more about showcasing for them what we do. And so when I did start social media again, I paid someone to do it, and then like it wasn't to my liking, because like no one's going to be able to carry your brand the way you do. And that was like, that goes back to your question, Jessica, but they weren't part of my team. They were a freelancer. And so I didn't get to have that same connection with them and that buy-in to the mission, vision, values. So then we stopped having them and then didn't do social media again. But recently, because my team's bigger, I have a bit more headspace. I have a better idea of why we're using social media. And so I use Amanda Perry's daily prompts. And so that's all I do. I don't do anything more than that because I know that we don't need it in order to succeed. And, you know, sometimes I get a bit of like passion. I'm like, yeah, I want to post about this, but it's on my own terms because I can't afford to burn out like that again. So that's how we use it. But I also like it because it builds community. Like more of my social media is about posting and liking other people's stuff and learning from them than posting on my own. And I found that really useful. And we have a whole brand range that was started from social media, and that's Girls with Drills. And that's one where, again, I didn't post loads about it. I posted a few times, but it's run off on its own. And you could go today and you could like Google or put in the hashtag Girls with Drills, and there'll be loads of people posting about it, and they have nothing to do with me. But it's just one of those that works, and that was luck. Like that wasn't planning, or that was just pure luck. But yeah, so my experience with social media is completely different.
It sounds a bit like what Jessica is saying, almost like start small and let it run organically rather than trying to force the matter.
Yeah.
We've just got time for one more question to you both before we have to wrap this up, I'm afraid. But I just wanted to ask you both, thinking about your careers in business, what were you most proud of?
Just starting. Paying myself. That was like quite a massive achievement. Go 2 years without being paid, and then like, yeah, be able to pay myself I think that's huge. But lots of little wins.
Yeah, I think you get little wins every day. I think maybe the first time I saw one of my clients on the West End, that was probably like quite
every single time someone books something.
Yeah, or like if like they get a big job on Netflix or whatever, it's a win for me. It's a win for them.
Yeah, I think every single time someone like books something or like buys into what you're doing, it's not about the financial, it's about the like, you believe in what we do and you trust us with your investment. So like that, it's the little wins, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
But almost about those things that give you that big sense of that well-being, as opposed to as opposed to sort of getting the big checks in, isn't it? That
it's always good though. It's always good as well. We're not going to turn that
down. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you both so much. I've really enjoyed that, and I found it really fascinating to listen to, and I'm sure everybody else watching has. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Kisha, and thank you, Jessica.
Yeah. Follow us. Follow us, Brightbox Maker and Brightbox Maker Space.
Awesome.